My name is Clara Hayes, and for a while I thought I was living a fairy tale here in Portland, Oregon. At 32, I had a life I loved, working as a freelance graphic designer surrounded by the smell of rain, evergreen trees, and strong coffee. My world was calm, predictable, and my own. Then David walked in, and my world wasn't just my own anymore. It became ours, and it was dazzling. He was the kind of man you read about in books. He didn't just listen to me, he heard the words I wasn't saying. We had the same obscure favorite movies, the same weird sense of humor, the same way of looking at the world. I felt like I had found a missing piece of myself, and I gave him my trust, my secrets, my whole heart, way faster than I should have. He was a master of grand gestures. Just 2 months in, he took me out on his small boat on the Willamette River to a tiny, secluded island. He had packed a perfect lunch, complete with limoncello he'd made himself. As we went for a swim, he dove down and came up with a giant, pearly shell, handing it to me and saying it was a token of his love, as rare and beautiful as I was. A few weeks later, he drove me to his childhood home, a quiet little house in the suburbs, and showed me old photos of his parents who had passed away. He even gave me his favorite childhood toy, a worn-out wooden car, telling me it held his best memories, and now he wanted me to have it. I was completely sold. I was sure he was the one, but fairy tales have a way of turning dark. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the magic started to curdle. A small, cynical comment about the dress I chose for dinner. A joke that was a little too sharp about something I said. He'd flirt with the barista at our favorite coffee shop, his eyes flicking over to me to make sure I was watching, to see that spark of jealousy. Each time, it felt like a tiny paper cut to the soul. I would get upset, sometimes I would cry, and he would immediately transform back into the loving, romantic man I fell for. He'd apologize, hold me, and promise it would never happen again. But it always did, and each time the cut was a little deeper, the apology a little less sincere. The outbursts got worse, the loving periods shorter. I felt like I was on a hamster wheel, constantly running, constantly trying to prove my love and loyalty just to earn a crumb of the affection he had once showered me with. I was exhausted, drained, and my confidence was in tatters. The real crack in the foundation came one evening when I got out of the shower. I walked into the living room and saw him on his laptop, quickly trying to close a tab. I caught a glimpse of it, a popular online dating site. My heart hammered against my ribs. When I confronted him, his face was a mask of innocence. He claimed he was just testing me, that he wanted to see if I would get jealous and controlling again. He made it sound like my insecurity was the problem, not his actions. I wanted to believe him, I really did, but a cold seed of doubt had been planted, and it was starting to grow roots. He was surprisingly terrible with computers for a guy his age. I remembered early in our relationship, he called me in a panic because he couldn't figure out how to set up an account on a chess website. The site had some weirdly complicated security questions. I tried to walk him through it over the phone, but he got impatient and just blurted out the username and password he wanted to use so I could do it for him. Just make it David the Great and the password Portland Rain 123. I used that for everything. The memory hit me like a lightning bolt. That night after he was asleep, I crept out of bed, my hands shaking as I opened my own laptop. I went to the dating site I'd seen on his screen. With a sick feeling in my stomach, I typed in David the Great and Portland Rain 123. The page loaded and I was in. I was looking at his secret life. And it shattered me. It wasn't just casual browsing. He had dozens of active conversations with other women. He was charming them with the same lines he'd used on me. And then I started reading the messages. Some of them made it clear he had met up with these women, that he had slept with them, cheating on me over and over again. But the worst part, the part that truly broke me, was what he said about me. He shared intimate details of our life, my fears, my insecurities, twisting them into complaints. He told one woman I was too needy, another that I was letting myself go. The beautiful, private world we had built was just material for him, something to use to make himself seem desirable and sensitive to strangers. I remember collapsing onto the cold hardwood floor, the kind of soul-crushing sob that leaves you empty and aching. Everything had been a lie. The island, the childhood toy, the feeling of being seen and understood, it was all a performance, a carefully crafted illusion to get what he wanted. I cried for hours until there were no tears left. And then, in that hollowed-out silence, something inside me didn't just break, it hardened. The grief turned into a cold, clear rage. He had played a game with my heart, and now I was going to change the rules. I opened my laptop again, my fingers moving with a new, icy purpose. I created a fake online dating profile. I chose a picture of a woman who was his type, artistic, a little mysterious, but generic enough that it couldn't be easily reverse image searched. I called her Amber. I wrote a bio full of things I knew he'd love, referencing obscure bands and philosophical ideas we'd discussed. Then, as Amber, I started a conversation with David. He took the bait instantly. After a few days of my carefully crafted, witty messages, he suggested we meet. I made Amber seem hesitant, shy. He, of course, insisted. I finally, reluctantly, agreed to meet him at a large, busy coffee house downtown on a Saturday afternoon. On the day of the date, I went to the coffee shop an hour early. I wore a big hat and sunglasses, a disguise that made me feel like a spy in my own life. I found a small table in a dark corner where I could see the entrance perfectly, but where he would never notice me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Part of me, the old, foolish part, hoped he wouldn't show up, that this was all just a nightmare. 10 minutes before Amber was supposed to arrive, I pulled out my phone and called him. My voice was steady as I asked where he was if he wanted to meet up. He sounded rushed, annoyed. "Sorry, can't," he said. "I have to run an errand for my boss. I'll see you later tonight." My heart didn't sink, it turned to stone. The lie was so easy for him. I hung up and kept my eyes glued to the door. And then, right on time, there he was. He walked in, looking confident and handsome, scanning the room for his mystery woman. He sat at a table near the window and waited. I watched as his patience wore thin. He started fidgeting with his phone, his confident posture slowly deflating. He looked at every woman who walked through the door. And then, a moment of pure, beautiful cosmic justice. A woman walked in who looked startlingly like the picture I had used for Amber's profile. David's eyes lit up. He stood up and walked right over to her, saying something with a charming smile. The woman looked confused, then annoyed. She shook her head and dismissed him, but he was persistent. Her voice got louder, telling him to please leave her alone. He slunk back to his table, his face flushed with embarrassment. He waited for another 30 minutes, a picture of defeated ego, before finally giving up and leaving. That afternoon, as Amber, I sent him a message. I told him that I was the woman he had approached. I wrote that I had seen him when I came in, but I found him physically unattractive in person and was too nervous to say it to his face, so I pretended not to know him. I apologized over and over, saying how terrible I felt. He replied almost instantly, trying to sound cool and unbothered. "It's okay," he wrote. "No hard feelings." But I knew him. For a narcissist like David, being called unattractive and being publicly rejected was a stake through the heart. And I knew then that it wasn't enough. So I did it to him again. I created Sarah, a yoga instructor. He was stood up at a trendy bar. Then came Emily, a writer. She rescheduled their date twice before canceling at the last minute because of a family emergency. I set up at least 10 different dates for him. Each one was a different woman, a different location, and a different kind of failure. I watched his confidence erode, his texts to the fake profiles becoming more and more insecure. Finally, I decided it was time. I asked him to meet me for dinner at a nice restaurant, a very public place. He probably thought I wanted to apologize for being so distant lately. When we sat down, I didn't waste any time. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "It's over, David. I know you've been cheating on me, you cheating son of a bitch." He immediately launched into his usual routine, denying everything, trying to twist it around and make me sound like a crazy, jealous freak. He was gaslighting me right there in the middle of the restaurant. I just let him finish. Then I leaned forward and said calmly, "All those failed dates, all those women who stood you up or canceled on you, that was all me." I let the words hang in the air between us. The color drained from his face. He stared at me speechless for a full 10 seconds. "How?" he finally whispered. I smiled a little. "Your password is Portland Rain 123. You should really be more creative." And with that, I stood up, left $20 on the table for my drink, and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. A few months went by. The silence was wonderful. Then, one day, I got a long email from him. He wrote that what I did to him was ingenious, that it was brilliant and cruel, and proved without a doubt that I was the love of his life. He confessed that I had completely destroyed his will to date online. He said he was now terrified every time he talked to a new woman, because he both feared and hoped that it was secretly me, playing another game with him. I never answered that email. I never answered any of the others that followed over the years. Even now, he still tries to contact me sometimes. I just delete them. He thought he was playing a game with me, but I was the one who wrote the ending. He is living in a prison I built for him, and me, I'm finally completely free.